But West Ham United are in a unique position, I think, in this transfer window because they sold their best asset in the shape of Declan Rice to Arsenal for £105 million. And so whichever club they go to now, trying to replace them, everyone knows how
You're
much
caked.
money...
You are caked.
how much money's in their pocket. So to hear today that the news that West Ham United are ready to walk away from a deal for James Ward-Prowse of Southampton is an interesting one because Southampton, I think, are trying to get as much as they can for all of their players. And they've also rejected a £17 million bid for Gianluca Scamacca from Inter Milan. I think the West Ham fans are starting to ask the questions why they haven't. João Paulinho, they've had a couple of bids, haven't got that deal done yet, if they are going to get that deal done. Calvin Phillips was the big report during the season, I think, that people kind of saying, if Rice goes, it'll be Calvin Phillips. No real conversation there. And you're wondering who's going to go in through the door because they certainly need to reinforce that midfield.
Yeah, I think it's a real shambles at West Ham. And I actually think that the board have done that fan base and that club a total disservice. The way that West Ham finished the season, there was total euphoria around the place, wasn't there? They were over the moon. They were dancing in the streets. They'd won their first trophy since 1980. They've planted their flag on European soil. Things have never been sweeter for this generation of West Ham United fans. Over the moon. A lot of my friends who support West Ham, they were crying in the stands at Prague. And I think they saw it as a little bit of a line in the sand, a landmark moment for the club. And they were going to use it this season as a springboard to bounce on and try and become one of the premier clubs in London. I think that is what they were hoping would happen. And I think that they had the platform to do that. They had the opportunity to do that. They had a prized asset in Declan Rice, who they could sell and make money on. They had the promise of Europa League football, which they could use to sign new players. And they had a fan base that were totally and utterly behind everything that had happened at the club because they had won that trophy. You know, winning, history is written by the winners and all that. It wasn't that way through the season. We know, because we lived it, that it was a very difficult season at time for David Moyes. I think there were quite a large section of the West Ham United fan base that wanted him out. In fact, at Craven Cottage, a few weeks before the end of the season, there was a Moyes out banner. But none of that mattered because of what happened in Prague. Suddenly, we're what now? 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks before the start of the season. All of that joy, all of that euphoria has totally dissipated. They've sold their best player. They've sold their captain. They've got so much money and there's no strategy. They have boxed themselves into a corner and I feel like the doom and gloom over East London is descending rapidly.
I think one of the issues, it seems, is that there's a kind of miscommunication, if you like, or at least a different philosophy between Tim Stuyton, who is the sporting director, recently come into West Ham United, and David Moyes. You need to be on the same page as a football club in terms of your targets. And I think they've moved around a little bit. Dennis Zakaria, I think there were reports that West Ham had agreed a fee. Whether or not that deal will happen in the coming days, we don't know. But ultimately, there was frustration from all sides at West Ham United over their approach and who are they going to be able to get. And I think if they don't resolve that very quickly, they could be left severely lacking.
This is because of the conduct of their ownership. Like, it was actually a travesty, and I don't think that enough was made of it, that their owner, David Sullivan, the day after they've won a European trophy, it's very significant what they did there. Like, West Ham United went over to Prague and planted their flag in European soil. That is huge. Like, that really is massive.
The way you keep saying it keeps.
No, but do you not think? I feel like we don't give it the prestige that it deserves. Like, winning trophies in Europe really does deserve an awful lot of consideration and praise, and they managed to do that. The day after, their owner comes on talkSPORT and basically says, Declan Rice is for sale, make sure that we get the money. You're like, hang on a minute, we're still celebrating. We're like, Declan Rice is still in the showers in Prague. He's not even out yet. Do you not want to just sort of embrace this situation? Also, let the dust settle, because maybe you don't want to settle.
I don't think so.
Why on earth do you come on?
I actually think that they, in many ways, not maybe went about it the right way, but ultimately the result of those conversations, I think, was pretty good. They managed to get the money that they wanted, £105 million for Declan Rice, early in the transfer window. It's not like Rice was pinched off them, once the season had already started, with a week left of the transfer window, maybe even a couple of days, and you're running around trying to get signings. They gave themselves 2 months to replace Declan Rice. I mean, I'm not sure what more you could ask for.
But they had 6 months to replace him. They knew he was leaving. They were always going to get the money, and they always knew that he was going to leave. Like, it didn't come as a surprise to them. They've known since the turn of the year that he was going to leave, and they should have been strategising to that effect since January. There is no way that Declan Rice was going to start the next season as a West Ham United player, regardless of where they finished. He was always going to go to a team that were going to compete for the title and top European silverware. So I think that they've made a total and utter mess of it. They still haven't signed a player. I know,
but do you know, this relationship with the sporting director and David Moyes suggests to me that there isn't total faith, and the West Ham fans will agree with this. You know, even after they won the Europa Conference League title, a lot of the fans, we were saying, look, this is it. You're going to support David Moyes. And the fans were calling into talkSPORT and saying, if you watched West Ham all season, you would not be saying that David Moyes should be staying on as our manager.
No, I don't think he should.
We love the fact that we've won a trophy. It's been unbelievable, but he's probably taken this team as far as they can go. Now, that's because they lost 20 matches in the Premier League last season. But we knew at that time here at talkSPORT that the ownership group had real faith in David Moyes. Obviously, winning that trophy meant a lot to them because they've kept him as manager.
But that's a problem.
But it doesn't mean that there is true faith that David Moyes is going to make it through the next campaign.
No, there's no faith. There shouldn't be any faith. David Moyes isn't a good enough manager. You can paper over cracks with European silverware, and that's what he's done.
You just said it was an incredible, amazing thing to do.
The two things can coexist. What he managed to do there, winning that trophy, is huge. It's huge, it's historic, and winning silverware is massive. But you can paper over cracks, and bad managers can have a lot of success. Avram Grant was a Rizzler paper away from winning a European Cup with Chelsea. Didn't make him a good manager, and had Chelsea won that European Cup in Moscow, Avram Grant should have been sacked. You can win silverware and still deserve to get sacked. And David Moyes is a prime example of that. Fair play to Moyes. I'm glad that he had his day in the sun. I think the pictures of him celebrating with his father are truly beautiful, but there is no way that he should be going into the new season as West Ham manager.
Okay, I do agree with you in a way, but I do think that winning that trophy and the significance of the football club bought him some time.
It did, but that's romantic and that's nice of you.
It's not necessarily romantic, because you can use these things as a springboard. They can galvanise a football club, they can galvanise a fan base, and the positivity, fingers crossed if West Ham fans do take that positivity into next season, that can lead you towards another good campaign. So that's why I think I spoke about it, Darren Moore and Sheffield Wednesday. You know, for me, just what they did in the playoffs and the way that they managed to galvanise the fan base, having lost the first leg 4-0, to come back, incredible scenes, record breakers, then get to Wembley, 123rd minute winner. Inside Wembley, I was there. You know, if you could bottle that, you would and sell it, because it was unbelievable to hear those Wednesday fans and to just crush it like that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I get it. I've heard the chairman say it was mutual and all that stuff. But I think had West Ham's owners crushed their feelings, their emotions in that way after that final, I think it would have been a mistake. I think you give David Moyes at least 10 Premier League games.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that it's the right thing to do to always wait for it to go wrong before you make a decision to sack the manager? Does it have to be... So you can't possibly sack a manager who has won silverware. You can't possibly sack a manager ever when things are going fairly well.
No, I don't agree with that. I think you can sack a manager who's
Is this not the
won
perfect
stuff.
Example of that then? Is this not the perfect example of David Moyes? And
they
could have done it
relegated.
they could have done it, but they nearly did.
But they didn't.
No, but they didn't. They didn't because there were some dodgy teams in the Premier League. But they didn't do it. They didn't survive because of their own brilliance.
But I think they'll survive this year if you look at the teams in the Premier League.
I think they probably will as well, but they could be more ambitious than that.
But remember, he is the manager. He's still the same guy that took them into Europe, that got them a top 8, and was it top 7 finish?
Yeah, I really don't think that he is going to survive the season. I think that he's done very well. He had the moments, but ultimately, I think West Ham and their ownership have really done that club and that fan base a massive disservice.